The 10% rule, building wealth from almost nothing. I remember the exact moment I realized I'd been lied to my entire life. Not by my parents, not by my teachers, but by something far more insidious, something that had convinced me that wealth was reserved for other people. People who started with money, people who got lucky, people who weren't me. I was sitting in my cramped apartment, staring at my bank account, watching the numbers refuse to grow no matter how hard I worked. And that's when it hit me. The system wasn't broken. I was just playing it wrong. What I'm about to tell you sounds impossible, I know, because when someone first told me this, I laughed in their face. I actually laughed. But here's the thing that keeps me up at night. The thing that fills me with this strange mixture of excitement and rage. If I had known this 10 years earlier, my entire life would be different right now. Completely different. And maybe yours would be too. Because the truth about building wealth isn't what they sell you in those flashy courses or those motivational seminars where everyone's screaming about manifesting abundance. It's quieter than that, simpler, almost embarrassingly simple. So simple that when you hear it, your first instinct will be to dismiss it, to think there has to be more to it. Because how could something this straightforward actually work? But that's exactly the trap, isn't it? We've been conditioned to believe that anything valuable must be complicated, must require some secret knowledge, some insider information, some stroke of genius that separates the wealthy from everyone else. What if I told you that the difference between staying broke and building real, generational wealth comes down to a single number? 10%. Just 10%. And no, this isn't another one of those save your way to wealth stories where I tell you to stop buying coffee and somehow you'll become a millionaire. This is different. This is about understanding something so fundamental about money that once you see it, you can't unsee it. The wealthy have known this forever. They've been using it, passing it down, building empires on this one principle, while the rest of us chase raises and side hustles and lottery tickets. Let me take you back to where this started for me, because I need you to understand that I wasn't special. I didn't have rich parents or a trust fund or some brilliant business idea. I was making $38,000 a year, living paycheck to paycheck, convinced that investing was something other people did, people with actual money to invest. I'd see those financial advice articles that talked about saving for retirement, and I'd think, retirement? I'm trying to figure out how to pay rent next month. The future felt like a luxury I couldn't afford to think about. And here's what nobody tells you when you're in that position. You feel stupid. You feel like everyone else figured out some secret, and you missed the class where they explained how money actually works. You scroll through social media and see people your age buying houses, taking vacations, living these lives that seem completely out of reach, and you wonder what you're doing wrong. You're working hard, you're not wasting money on ridiculous things, and yet the gap between where you are and where you want to be just keeps getting wider. That feeling of being left behind, of watching everyone else build their lives while you're stuck in place, it eats at you. It really does. But then something happened that changed everything. I met this guy, older guy, nothing flashy about him, drove a modest car, wore regular clothes, didn't look wealthy at all, and somehow we got talking about money, and I made some comment about how investing was for people who already had money, and he just smiled. Not a condescending smile, but this knowing smile, like he'd heard this 1,000 times before. And he asked me a question that I'm going to ask you right now. If I gave you the choice between receiving $1 million today or taking a single penny that doubled every day for 30 days, which would you choose? Think about it for a second. Really think about it. Most people, and I was one of them, would grab that $1 million without hesitation. Because a penny? Even if it doubles every day, how much could that possibly be worth? Here's where your brain is about to break. On day 1, you have 1 penny. On day 2, 2 pennies. Day 3, 4 pennies. This seems pathetic, right? By day 10, you'd have just $5.12. The person who took the $1 million is already living their best life, and you're sitting there with pocket change feeling like an absolute fool. Day 15 arrives and you've got $163, still nothing compared to $1 million. You're starting to panic, wondering if you made the worst decision of your life. But then something strange starts happening. Day 20, you've got $5,243. Okay, that's something, but still nowhere near $1 million. Day 25. You're at 167,000. Now you're starting to feel it, that little flutter of hope, but you're still behind. And then, in just the final 5 days, everything explodes. Day 26. 334,000. Day 27, 668,000. Day 28, 1,336,000. You've just passed the person who took the million, and there are still 2 days left. Day 29, 2,672,000. Day 30, $5,368,709 from a single penny. That's not magic. That's not luck. That's compound interest. And it's the most powerful force in building wealth that has ever existed. Einstein allegedly called it the eighth wonder of the world, and whether he actually said that or not doesn't matter, because it's true. Here's what kills me, what absolutely haunts me. Most people never make it to day 30. They quit on day 10 when they see that pathetic $5. They quit on day 15 when their friends are showing off what they bought with their million. They quit on day 25 when they're so close, but can't see it yet. The tragedy isn't that compound interest doesn't work. The tragedy is that most people never give it enough time to work. And that brings us back to the 10% rule, because this isn't just some abstract math problem. This is your life. This is your future. And if you stick with me, if you don't click away right now because this seems too simple or too slow or too boring, I'm going to show you exactly how to turn this principle into actual wealth. Before we go further, I need you to do something, and I know this sounds like every other person on this platform. But here's the difference. I'm not asking because I need your like or your subscription. I'm asking because I need to know you're serious. The like button, that subscription, it's not for me. It's your commitment to yourself that you're going to see this through, that you're not going to be the person who quits on day 10. Hit that like button right now. Subscribe to this channel, because if you can't commit to pressing a button, how are you going to commit to the 10% rule for the next 10, 20, 30 years? I'm being harsh because someone needed to be harsh with me. Someone needed to shake me and say, stop looking for shortcuts, stop waiting for perfect, stop making excuses. This works, but only if you actually do it. So subscribe, and let's continue, because what comes next is going to challenge everything you think you know about building wealth. Now, the 10% rule is simple. You take 10% of every single dollar you earn, and you invest it before you pay for anything else. Not save it, invest it. There's a massive difference that most people completely miss. When you save money, it sits in a bank account earning maybe 0.5% interest if you're lucky, getting destroyed by inflation, actually losing value year after year. When you invest money, you're putting it to work, you're exposing it to compound growth. You're giving it the chance to double and double and double again like that penny we talked about. But here's where people mess this up, where they sabotage themselves before they even start. They think they need to wait until they're making more money. They think, okay, when I get that raise, when I pay off this debt, when I have more financial breathing room, then I'll start investing 10%. And that thinking, that perfectly logical, perfectly reasonable thinking, is exactly what keeps people broke forever. The amount doesn't matter. Read that again because it's going to save you decades of regret. The amount doesn't matter nearly as much as the habit and the time. If you make $2,000 a month right now, 10% is $200. Can you afford it? Maybe not comfortably. Maybe it means saying no to things, making sacrifices, eating out less, finding cheaper entertainment, actually budgeting for the first time in your life. And I know what you're thinking, because I thought the same thing. $200 a month isn't going to make me rich. You're right. $200 a month for 1 year, at a typical market return of around 10% annually, gives you about $2,500. Hardly life-changing. But watch what happens when you don't quit. After 5 years of investing $200 monthly at 10% returns, you have $15,500. Your contributions total $12,000, but the account is worth $15,500. That extra $3,500. That's compound interest starting to wake up. It's day 15 of the penny experiment. After 10 years, you have $41,000 from $24,000 in contributions. You've made $17,000 just from growth. Now compound interest is stretching, getting warmed up. After 20 years, you have $151,000 from $48,000 in contributions. You've made over $100,000 in growth. Compound interest is fully awake now, working harder than you ever could. After 30 years, you have $452,000 from $72,000 in contributions. You've made $380,000 in growth. You're approaching $500,000, and you never once got a massive windfall or hit it big or did anything except consistently invest $200 monthly. But here's the part that's going to blow your mind. The part that made me actually angry when I first calculated it. Angry at all the time I'd wasted. Angry at everyone who never told me this. If you just doubled that to $400 a month, which you could absolutely do if you made getting a raise or a better job a priority over the next few years, you'd have over $900,000 in 30 years. You'd be a millionaire, or close enough that it barely matters, from $400 a month. That's $13 a day. People spend that on lunch without thinking twice. They spend that on streaming services and phone plans and random purchases that they forget about within a week. But invested consistently, with time to compound, it becomes generational wealth. It becomes the difference between retiring with dignity and working until you physically can't anymore. It becomes the difference between leaving something for your kids or leaving them with your debts. And yet, knowing this, most people still won't do it. They won't. I've told friends about this, family members, co-workers, and watched them nod along like it makes perfect sense. Watch them agree that yes, they should definitely start doing this, and then watch them do absolutely nothing. Why? Why do people sabotage their own futures when the solution is right in front of them? I've thought about this a lot, probably more than I should, and I think I've figured it out. It comes down to three things: immediate gratification, fear, and lack of belief. The immediate gratification part is obvious. Investing $200 a month means you can't spend that $200 on something you want right now. Your brain is screaming at you that you could buy that thing you've been eyeing, or go on that weekend trip, or upgrade your phone. And instead, you're going to send it into some abstract investment account where you won't see it or touch it or benefit from it for decades. That's a hard sell to the part of your brain that wants pleasure right now. But the fear and lack of belief, those are more insidious. People are terrified of investing because they don't understand it. And instead of learning, they avoid it entirely. They've heard stories about people losing everything in the market, about crashes and recessions and scams, and they convince themselves that keeping money in a savings account is safer. It's not safer. It's guaranteed to lose value. But it feels safer because at least they can see it. They can control it. They can pretend they're being responsible. And the lack of belief is the real killer. Deep down, people don't actually believe that they can become wealthy. They've internalized this story that wealth is for other people who are smarter or luckier or more connected, and no amount of math or evidence will convince them otherwise because it's not really about the math. It's about identity. If you've spent your entire life thinking of yourself as someone who struggles with money, someone who's just getting by, someone who's not good with finances, then actually becoming wealthy would require you to completely reimagine who you are. And that's terrifying. It's easier to stay stuck in a familiar struggle than to step into an unfamiliar success. But here's what I need you to understand, what I'm begging you to really hear. The math doesn't care about your feelings. Compound interest doesn't care whether you believe in it or not. It works regardless. The only question is whether you're going to get out of your own way and let it work for you. So let's talk about the practical side of this, because knowing the principle is worthless if you don't know how to actually implement it. First, you need to automate this. Do not rely on willpower or discipline to manually invest every month. You will fail. We all fail when we rely on willpower, because willpower is a limited resource that gets depleted throughout the day. Instead, set up an automatic transfer the day after you get paid, before you have a chance to think about it or spend it, or convince yourself that you need it for something else. Make it invisible. The money should move from your paycheck directly into your investment account before you ever see it, before you ever have the chance to consider it available spending money. This is crucial. When the money never hits your regular checking account, you don't miss it. You adjust your lifestyle to the 90% that remains, and within a few months, you genuinely forget that you're even investing. It becomes background noise, something that just happens automatically, like paying rent or utilities. Second, you need to invest in low-cost index funds. Not individual stocks, not cryptocurrency, not whatever your friend says is about to explode, not some hot tip you read on social media. Index funds. Specifically, broad market index funds that track the entire stock market, like a total stock market index fund or an S&P 500 index fund. Why? Because you're not trying to beat the market. You're not trying to get rich quick. You're trying to capture the average market return, which historically has been around 10% annually over long periods, and you're trying to do it with minimal fees and minimal risk. Individual stocks are gambling. You might win, you probably won't, and even if you do win, you're likely to give it all back eventually because you don't actually know what you're doing. Index funds are betting on the entire economy growing over time, which it has consistently done for over a century. Companies fail, industries collapse, economic crises happen, but the overall market trends upward over long enough time horizons. That's what you're capturing. The fees matter more than you think. If you're paying 1% in fees versus 0.03%, that difference seems tiny, but over 30 years, it costs you tens of thousands of dollars in lost growth. Find the lowest fee index funds available through reputable brokerages. This isn't complicated. You're not looking for secret investment strategies or insider knowledge. You're looking for boring, cheap, diversified funds that you can automatically invest in for decades without thinking about them. Third, you need to ignore the market. This is the hardest part for most people, the part where they fail, even when they've done everything else right. The market will crash. Multiple times during your investing lifetime, the market will drop 20, 30, 40% or more. You will watch your account balance plummet. You will feel sick. You will be convinced that this time is different, that the economy is truly collapsing, that you need to sell everything before you lose it all. Do not sell. Do not pause your contributions. Do not check your account balance obsessively. In fact, the best thing you can do during a market crash is absolutely nothing. Keep investing your 10% like clockwork, because now you're buying investments at a discount. Imagine if your favorite store put everything on sale for 40% off. Would you stop shopping there? Would you panic and avoid the store entirely? No, you'd buy more while things are cheap. The same logic applies to investing, but our emotions get in the way because we're watching our money, our precious accumulated wealth, seemingly disappear. But it's not disappearing. The investments still exist. You still own the same number of shares. The price has dropped temporarily, and if history is any guide, it will recover and reach new highs. Every single market crash in history has eventually recovered and been surpassed. Every single one. The people who got wealthy are the ones who kept investing through the crashes, who bought when everyone else was panicking and selling. The people who stayed broke are the ones who sold at the bottom and never got back in, or who stopped investing when things looked scary. Which person are you going to be? That's not rhetorical. I'm actually asking you to decide right now, before you're in the middle of a crisis with your emotions screaming at you, which person you're going to be. Because you will be tested. The market will crash during your investing lifetime, probably multiple times, and everything inside you will want to abandon this plan. That's the moment that determines your financial future. Not how much you make, not how smart you are, not whether you get lucky. Whether you stick to the plan when it feels like the plan is failing. Now, let's address the elephant in the room that I know some of you are thinking about. What if you can't afford 10% right now? What if you're drowning in debt, barely covering necessities, genuinely living paycheck to paycheck without any room to cut back? First, I'd challenge you to really audit your spending, because most people have more room than they think. But if you genuinely can't do 10% right now, start with whatever you can, 5%, 3%, even 1%. The amount matters less than establishing the habit and getting time on your side. 1% of a $2,000 monthly income is $20. Can you find $20? Can you skip one meal out, one streaming service, one impulse purchase? $20 invested monthly at 10% returns gives you about $15,000 in 30 years. That's not nothing. That's a down payment on a car, an emergency fund, a cushion that could prevent you from going into debt when something unexpected happens. But more importantly, starting with 1% builds the muscle. You prove to yourself that you can do this, that you can prioritize future you over present you. And as your income grows, as you get raises or switch jobs or develop new skills, you increase that percentage. Go from 1% to 3% when you get a raise. Go from 3 to 5. Eventually get to 10. The goal is 10% minimum, but something is infinitely better than nothing, and nothing is what most people are doing. They're waiting for the perfect time, the perfect amount, the perfect conditions, and those never come. Perfect is the enemy of done. Start messy, start small, start uncomfortable, but start. There's also the question of what to do about debt while you're investing, and this is where personal finance experts disagree, sometimes violently. Some say you should eliminate all debt before investing a single dollar. Others say you should invest while paying off debt. Here's my take. It depends on the interest rate. If you have high-interest debt, like credit cards charging 18% or more, pay that off aggressively before you focus on investing. You can't reliably earn 18% in the market, so you're mathematically better off eliminating that debt first. But if you have low-interest debt, like a reasonable car loan at 4% or a mortgage at 3%, keep making the minimum payments and invest simultaneously. Why? Because the opportunity cost of waiting to invest is enormous. Remember, time is the secret ingredient in compound interest. Every year you delay is a year you can't get back, a year of growth you've permanently lost. If you spend 5 years paying off a low-interest car loan before you start investing, you've lost 5 years of compound growth. Those 5 years at the beginning are worth more than 10 years at the end, because they have more time to compound. So, make the minimum payments on low-interest debt and invest your 10%. It's not the most emotionally satisfying approach because you'll still have debt hanging over you, but it's mathematically optimal, and we're playing a math game here, not an emotion game. Now we're getting into the territory where this gets really interesting, where the 10% rule stops being about survival and starts being about actual wealth building. Because here's what happens when you stick with this for a decade or more. The compound growth starts to eclipse your contributions. In the early years, your account grows primarily because you're adding money to it. If you invest $200 a month, the account grows by roughly $2,400 a year because that's what you contributed. The growth is nice, but it's small compared to your contributions. But after 10, 15, 20 years, something magical happens. The growth starts to exceed your contributions. You're still adding $2,400 a year, but the account is growing by $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 from investment returns alone. Your money is making more money than you're adding. That's when you realize you've crossed over from working for money to money working for you. And that's when the real wealth building accelerates, when you're not just saving your way to wealth but investing your way there, letting compound interest do the heavy lifting. This is also when most people start to wish they'd started earlier, wish they'd invested more, wish they'd taken this seriously when they first heard about it, instead of dismissing it as too slow or too boring. I think about this a lot, about how different my life would be if I'd started at 20 instead of 30, or if I'd invested 15% instead of 10. But regret is useless. All we have is right now, this moment, this decision. You can't go back and start 10 years ago, but you can start today. And 10 years from now, you'll either wish you'd started today, or you'll be grateful that you did. There's also something deeply liberating about the 10% rule that I didn't expect when I started. It removes so much anxiety and noise from financial decision-making. You don't have to constantly wonder if you're doing enough, if you should be investing more, if you're falling behind. 10% is your number. You hit that number every month, and you can spend the rest guilt-free, knowing you're taking care of future you. You want to buy something nice? Great, do it with the 90%. You want to take a vacation? Enjoy it without guilt, because you've already paid yourself first. The 10% rule isn't about deprivation or sacrifice or living like a monk. It's about balance, about making sure that present you gets to enjoy life while future you isn't left broken and desperate. But here's the part that's going to challenge you, the part that separates people who build real wealth from people who just get by. As your income grows, your 10% should grow with it. If you make $40,000 a year and invest 10%, that's $4,000 annually. Great, you're doing it. But then you get a raise and make 50,000. Your 10% is now 5,000. Do not inflate your lifestyle by the entire $10,000 raise. Invest the additional 1,000. This is called lifestyle inflation, and it's the silent killer of wealth building. People get raises and immediately increase their spending to match. They move to a nicer apartment, buy a nicer car, eat out more, subscribe to more services, and they end up no better off than before despite making more money. It's a treadmill that never ends. Instead, bank at least half of every raise. If you get a $5,000 annual raise, increase your investing by $2,500 and your lifestyle by $2,500. You still get to enjoy making more money, you still feel the benefit of the raise, but you're also dramatically accelerating your path to wealth. Do this consistently, and you could be investing 20 or 30% of your income within a few years without feeling deprived because you slowly adjusted your lifestyle rather than trying to slash spending all at once. This is how people making average incomes retire as millionaires while people making six figures stay perpetually broke. It's not about how much you make, it's about how much you keep and invest. I know someone making $60,000 a year who's on track to retire a millionaire in their 50s. I know someone making $200,000 who's drowning in debt and has nothing saved. The difference isn't intelligence or luck, it's behavior, it's discipline. It's the willingness to delay gratification and trust the process. And look, I'm not going to lie to you and say this is easy. It's simple, but it's not easy. There will be months where you desperately want to skip your investment to pay for something that feels urgent. There will be times when your friends are doing things you can't afford because you're investing that money instead. There will be moments of doubt where you question whether this is worth it, whether you should just live for today and worry about the future later. Those moments are normal. Everyone has them. The difference between people who build wealth and people who don't is that wealthy people feel those doubts and invest anyway. They don't wait until they feel like it or until it's convenient. They stick to the system because the system works, even when it doesn't feel like it's working. We're almost at the end here, and I want to bring this back to where we started, back to that penny doubling every day. Because the real lesson of that thought experiment isn't just about compound interest, it's about patience. It's about trusting the process even when the results seem insignificant. It's about understanding that real wealth is built slowly, quietly, consistently over decades, not quickly or easily or with some brilliant insight. The 10% rule isn't sexy. It's not going to make you rich next year or even in 5 years. It's not going to get you 1 million followers or a feature in a magazine. It's boring. It's unsexy. It's the financial equivalent of eating vegetables and exercising regularly. Everyone knows they should do it. Almost nobody actually does it. And the ones who do are rewarded with outcomes that seem impossible to everyone else. But here's what I can promise you. If you start today, if you invest 10% of every dollar you earn, if you automate it and ignore the market noise and stick with it for decades, you will build wealth. Not might build wealth, will build wealth. The math is certain. The only variable is you. Will you start? Will you stick with it? Will you be the person who makes it to day 30, or will you quit on day 10 when it looks like it's not working? I started late. I wasted years making excuses and waiting for the perfect time and believing that investing was for other people. I can't get those years back, but I can make sure I don't waste another day, and neither can you. So here's what I need you to do right now, not later, not when you've thought about it more, right now. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, smash the like button. And here's the most important part. Leave a comment telling me what percentage you're going to start investing today. Even if it's 1%. Even if you think I'm completely wrong and this won't work for you. Leave a comment. Make it real. Make it a commitment. Because the difference between intending to do something and actually doing it is taking that first tiny action. Comment below, and let's build wealth together. And if you disagree, if you think I'm full of it, comment that too. I want to hear it. I want the discussion. Because maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there's something I'm missing. But I don't think I am. The math is the math. Compound interest is real. The 10% rule works. The only question left is whether you're going to do it. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Now go invest that 10%.